Hi, I'm not going to make this one too long, but I do want to say something about it. Today is a historically important day because it marks exactly 70 years since Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne in 1952. Now, by any measure, that is remarkable. 70 years. Um, that's two-thirds of a century. I mean, it's a very long period of time in that sense. Or to look at it another way, 14 British prime ministers, I believe 14 American presidents, numerous popes, numerous other world leaders during that time. And the world has changed profoundly. The world's went through so much. The the generation gap of the 60s, the Cold War, the collapse of empire, the rise of the Commonwealth, the rise of the digital world, the rise of the internet, the end of the Cold War. Yeah, it's just everything in the last 70 years has happened during her reign. I'm not saying that that's directly involving her, but it just gives you an idea of the length of time. Now, today, there's nothing particularly happening other than the fact that this is the day that she ascended the throne. Just a quick explanation for outsiders who might be somewhat puzzled by this. There's a difference between ascension and the coronation. So, ascension is literally the moment a monarch becomes monarch. In this case, when her father, King George VI, the king featured in the King's Speech, passed away. He was a heavy smoker and he died at just 56. She was on holiday in Kenya. If you've seen The Crown, that covers it very well. When she got the news that she was going to be Queen of the United Kingdom, not Queen of England, that is a common misconception. Queen of the United Kingdom and Commonwealth realm. Um, she's already broken several records. She's by far our longest serving monarch, surpassing Queen Victoria now by 6 years. She 7 years, in fact. She is the longest reigning current head of state in the world by far. I think Sultan Bolkiah of Brunei is second, but that's a distant second. Um, she is the longest reigning queen ever anywhere, and she's Europe's longest serving monarch, second longest serving monarch ever after France's King Louis the XIV, who reigned for 72 years, and he was a child when he ascended the throne. So, she's a record breaker, and whether people are pro monarchy or not, I don't think you can, that's nothing to downplay. It is what it is. Now, some people might say she hasn't really had to do anything except be alive. That's not true. A constitutional monarchy is a very important balancing act. She's not a politician, and her political powers are limited. Now, Republicans say this is not quite true, that she has more power than is said. I do think that it is going to be a very strange thing when she goes, and we have to be realistic. She's a 95-year-old woman. Although her health has always been pretty robust, she's not going to be around forever. Um, in all likelihood, probably her time will be within the next few years. Charles will be in his early 70s when he becomes king. Now, I think we're going to go through a very important phase of the monarchy having a real introspection. It's been rocked in recent years. There is, of course, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex breaking themselves away from the royal family and all their allegations. There's a Prince Andrew thing. Incidentally, I read a report in the paper yesterday that one of his former girlfriends has questioned this widely publicized photograph showing him with his arms around the teenage girl, suggesting that might be doctored because there's a photograph showing her in exactly the same pose in another photograph. If that's true, then who knows what's going on? I will say this: I'm not going to say that Prince Andrew's innocent because it would take incredible naivety for him not to know anything that was going on. But I am uneasy about the way this man's being utterly vilified. I mean, he has lost all his military titles. He's basically been shunned from the royal family. It just seems that he is being punished before he's even being able to clear his name or being able to, prove these allegations false. It just seems, surely due process is important, even for the Queen's son. And I don't really like the way that this has gone about, the way Andrew is being totally vilified. That's not the same as saying that he's innocent. I think he must have known something, but I just don't really agree with the way he's being totally castigated before he's even been found guilty. Um, but those things have rocked the monarchy in recent years. Um, it's almost like The Crown as a series is a bookend to this reign. But the number of things that happened in her reign is incredible. She was a young woman, of course, when she became queen, just 25, 26. Anyway, back to Ascension. I was explaining that Ascension is literally the moment a monarch becomes monarch. The coronation is usually about a year later. In the case of Queen Elizabeth II, it was a full year and 4 months later, June 1953. Now, the reason for that is because it's a huge event. It takes a lot of planning. In 1953, we were still in a post-war Britain. Britain was quite gloomy at that time. We were still cleaning up from the Blitz. I think rationing was still going on to some extent. And basically, people just wanted escapism. 1953 was also the year of the Great Storm, which cost hundreds of lives in the southeast and in the Netherlands. And people just wanted escapism. They wanted good news, and the coronation provided that. I think the decision to televise it was a very good one. Controversial at the time, it was by no means a foregone conclusion that that would be the case. But I think that in retrospect, it was definitely the right choice. Television was a new thing. It was something that was innovative for a modern monarch. And when Charles becomes king, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, there'll be the whole internet aspect. There'll be probably live streaming on social media. I mean, there'll be a whole other aspect to it, which will be again symbolic of another generation. But I think there is going to be questions on Charles as an individual. I have to say, I personally quite like Charles. But William's more popular, and I think they're both going to be under enormous pressure to make this institution relevant in the 21st century. As it stands, the British people, I think for the most part, still see this as an intrinsic part of our culture, much more so than other monarchies around the world. I mean, let's face it, no one goes to Spain to see the Spanish royal family, no one goes to Sweden to see the Swedish royal family, and I mean that with all due respect. But there is something that is quintessentially British about our royal family. It's just intrinsically linked in the eyes of the outside world and with ourselves. I think people who even aren't that crazy about the Queen know that it's part of our culture, rightly or wrongly. I understand the Republican argument that fundamentally it's hereditary privilege, but with that privilege is also enormous pressure and enormous expectations. I understand the argument that it is an archaic institution, and I also agree that simply saying that it's culture, therefore nothing should change, is not a full argument. But if we were to transition to a presidency system, I don't know. It would be a huge thing. It would be a huge thing. I think Republicans maybe, put too much focus on this. I don't think it's the biggest priority in terms of what this country needs. I think there's a lot of other things. We're still living in a very uncertain world. I don't think necessarily having a constitutional change is our biggest priority. We're a pretty stable country, and this is not to say if we were a republic, we wouldn't be stable. I mean, other great nations have thrown over their monarchies and they're still great powers. France, for example, the United States. But it would be very strange, I think, if Britain was a republic. I do think we would lose something. That's my gut feeling. I do think we would lose something fundamental about our culture. Um, but anyway, I'll just round this up. If you haven't seen The Crown, check it out. It's an excellent series, and it's not overtly pro-royal. I mean, yes, it's about the royals. Yes, it's intrinsically about that family, but it isn't. There's times it isn't overly sympathetic in its portrayal of the Queen. So, it's not, I wouldn't say it's royalist propaganda. It's just a very good take at history, really. Um, but 70 years today, congratulations, ma'am. I mean, she is an ideal constitutional monarch. I don't think anyone can take that away from her. I mean, this is a woman who's in her 90s. She still works very hard. I think some of the Republican attacks are just vitriolic, saying that the royals are all leeches and things like this. I think it's grossly unfair. The Queen certainly, but even there's members of the royal family that do things that their critics have never done. So take William, for example, and the royal, the air ambulance service and things like that. I get a bit frustrated with the vitriol that some Republicans come out with. Of course, there's the other side. Some royalists are sycophantic, and I would never support a situation where we were like Thailand and you can't criticize the royals. But we're not Thailand. We don't have les majors in this country, thank goodness. Um, in the 50s, it was a little bit more, we were much more conservative. Criticizing the Queen was blasphemy almost back then. Now, not so much. Newspapers openly question royal decisions, not so much the Queen personally. Um, but if I've any critique perhaps of the royal family and the Queen, it would be that sometimes they have pandered too much to despotic rulers around the world in a way that they really didn't need to that extent. But otherwise, I think she's been an ideal constitutional monarch. And if you're British, I think we can be justified in being proud of her. The service that she has showed this country, 70 years. This is a 95-year-old woman. I think that warrants a degree of respect, even if you're not a royalist. I mean, I've heard this. A lot of Republicans have said they don't agree with the system, but they respect the Queen personally, and I think that counts for something. Okay, let me know your thoughts. And it's a historic day, 70 years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign today. And this year will be the Platinum Jubilee.